What's up, Taiwan? I'm Sandy Chi with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. In a first for Taiwan, prosecutors are charging a Chinese ship captain with deliberately damaging one of the country's undersea cables. Reese brings us more from Taipei.
Prosecutors in southern Taiwan are charging a Chinese ship captain for intentionally cutting one of the country's undersea cables. It's the first time that someone has ever been indicted on such charges in Taiwan. Taiwan has several submarine cables connecting its main island to its outlying territories. In late February, authorities spotted the ship containing 8 Chinese crew members loitering around waters off Taiwan's southwestern coast near the Taiwan Penghu No. 3 cable days before it was cut. The vessel, named Hongtai 58, is suspected of hooking the cable with its anchor and yanking it until it broke. Only the ship's captain has been brought up on charges. The 7 other crew members will not be charged due to a lack of evidence and will be sent back to China. This case is one of at least 2 cable-cutting incidents this year involving ships linked to China. China, which claims Taiwan as its territory, has been ramping up threats around the country. Beijing has conducted naval exercises around Taiwan, and cable cutting is now believed to be one of its grey zone warfare tactics, where it exerts pressure on Taiwan without actually attacking. And just a few weeks ago, China revealed it had developed a new remote device capable of cutting cables, even in the world's deepest oceans. And with an upcoming project to link Taiwan, South Korea, Japan and the United States with an undersea cable, it's likely not just Taiwan who are concerned with China's undersea sabotage. Scott Huang, Devon Tai and Reese for TaiwanPlus.
There's been more volatility in global markets as investors weigh the impact of Donald Trump's tariff policies. Wall Street dropped again after the White House imposed even higher duties for Chinese imports. Rosie Greninger reports.
American toy shop owner Joe Novak is bracing for an uncertain future as the Trump administration clarified that tariffs against Chinese goods are higher than initially understood. Beijing will pay a 125% tariff on top of the 20% imposed last year, subjecting imports to the US to a total levy of 145%. And American consumers are ultimately expected to pay the price.
So as you can tell by tariffs affecting China predominantly right now, as well as some Southeast Asia, a tariff of 20, 40, 50, they keep going up, 80, 100%, is going to definitely affect the cost of the toys. Thanks.
After announcing sweeping global tariffs last week, US President Donald Trump has paused the policy for 90 days for all countries except China. That's after China retaliated, applying levies of 84% to goods imported from the US. But President Trump says he still wants to make a deal with Beijing.
I have great respect for President Xi. He's been, in a true sense, he's been a friend of mine for a long period of time. And I think that we'll end up working out something that's very good for both countries. I look forward to it.
China claims they are open to dialogue, but only if it's based on mutual respect. As the trade war between the world's 2 biggest economies continues to escalate, the impacts are being felt on the stock market. After rallying in their previous session, much of Wall Street's gains were wiped out overnight. The exchanges in Asia and Australia have also plunged. Financial experts say if the tariff policy remains, so will the uncertainty.
There is one bit of signal this market is sending to the president, and really to one man, the president himself. We do not like this tariff strategy. Every bit of news can be linked back to a tweet or a direct policy item that came out which was tariff related.
Trump has conceded there will be initial difficulties, but remains adamant Americans must stay focused on his end goal: boosting manufacturing in the US and in turn creating more jobs. The US president claims more than 70 countries are looking to negotiate a deal, now including the European Union, which has halted planned retaliatory measures.
We want to negotiate. We want to talk. We appreciate that you have brought this pause on so-called reciprocal tariffs, and we in turn are now pausing our proposed countermeasures.
Trump's aides say negotiations are going well, with over a dozen deals already being offered to the United States Trade Representative.
USTR has informed us that there are maybe 15 countries now that have made explicit offers that we're studying and considering and, deciding whether they're good enough to present to the president.
Despite being one of the US's main trading partners, China is not among the countries lining up to negotiate, saying they refuse to bow to pressure, blackmail and threats, leaving the trade war between these two economic powers escalating and likely to impact global growth. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
China has now raised its tariff on U.S. imports to 125%, the latest escalation in the trade war between the two countries. But Beijing says it will not respond to any further U.S. tariffs. President Lai Ching-te says Taiwan will be one of the first countries to talk trade with the U.S.
我嘛要让大家知影，咱台湾现主时是美国政府第一批的谈判名单内底，政府会做好准备。
Speaking to manufacturing industry representatives, President Lai said he's hopeful that Taiwan can strike a trade deal with the U.S. soon. Lai also called for unity, urging the nation to stand together as Taiwan braces for the impact of U.S. tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump had announced 32% tariffs on products from Taiwan, though he later suspended those for 90 days. Asian stock markets wavered on Friday, despite a Thursday rebound following Trump's tariff pause. Taiwan's TAIEX was still up on Friday, but other Asian stock indexes went down slightly over fears of a U.S.-China trade war. In Japan, the Nikkei was down nearly 3%. Meanwhile, Hong Kong and Shanghai indexes were up slightly. Further uncertainty is likely as the U.S. and China continue to ratchet up tariffs on each other. Taiwan's premier is calling on the legislature to support the government's plan for alleviating Trump's tariffs on the country. Tiffany Wong has more.
Taiwan's cabinet has promised more government support for its manufacturing and agricultural industries, two industries which are expected to be hit hard if the U.S. falls through on new tariffs. On Wednesday, Trump announced a 90-day pause to the so-called reciprocal tariffs except on China, putting a halt to tariffs of 32% on Taiwan, although a flat tariff of 10% is still in place. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te says the country will be in the first round of discussions with the U.S. as countries clamor to negotiate with the U.S. and get tariffs retracted. Lai has proposed a zero-tariff basis, suggesting Taiwan would buy more U.S. goods and invest more to even out the U.S.'s trade deficit. Taiwan's premier asked for support from the legislature for these discussions, but opposition legislators are concerned that Taiwan may be playing too nice with the U.S.
我们愿意付出什么代价？
付出什么代价？
是因为国际贸易嘛，有得有失嘛。
策略方面我大概不容易明讲啊，
是
变明讲，但是我们可能付出就是我们必须在关税对等的这个情况，不是对等关税哦，是双方面关税对等的情况之下，我们可能要做一些调试，而且我们在排除非关税障碍。
While Taiwan hopes to get on with talks with the U.S. as soon as possible, it will need to balance its relations with its closest unofficial ally and the interests of Taiwanese people to ease economic uncertainties abroad and at home. Chris Ma and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
The Global Taiwan Institute says Taiwan should increase its defense budget and buy more weapons in response to threats from China. The Washington-based think tank made the recommendation in a report co-written by Brent Christensen, a former director of the U.S.'s de facto embassy in Taiwan. The report says Taiwan must show its international partners that it is committed to defending itself. It says that any increase in weapon purchases from the United States would be seen as positive in Washington. The report also calls on the U.S. to speed up arms shipments to Taiwan. Taiwan Straits Exchange Foundation, a semi-official body handling relations with China, says they are receiving more questions than normal. That's after the government announced it will require thousands of Chinese spouses in Taiwan to prove they've given up their household registration in China.
其实对于这个大部分的这个陆配来说，他们接到这个通知，第一个最担心的一个问题就是说我该怎么处理这件事情。所以大部分的这个来询问的一个民众，大概第一个非常的焦虑，第二个不知道该如何处理。
The foundation says it's assigned additional people to staff their service counter and added new telephone hotlines. Since 2004, Taiwan has required Chinese citizens applying for Taiwanese ID cards to first give up their household registration in China. But Taiwan's immigration agency says it has found no records for over 10,000 Chinese spouses. It is giving them a 3-month deadline to provide such proof. Officials say they'll give special consideration to people who can't return to China for political or health reasons, and those who haven't been to China in the past 10 years. All good things come to an end. A special Southeast Asian bookstore in New Taipei is closing after a decade. But as Tiffany Wong reports, the community hopes its legacy will live on.
Closing a chapter on this beloved bookstore. Brilliant Time, a Southeast Asian-themed bookstore in New Taipei, is shutting down after 10 years. The space has been a hub for people from Southeast Asian countries living in Taiwan, looking for stories of their homelands. And now the owners say their mission is complete.
那但这10年来，慢慢台湾各地的图书馆也开始有东南亚的书了。就政府用政府的 budget 来买书，然后给在台湾的外籍劳工、外籍配偶看。所以我觉得我们的阶段性任务基本上完成了。
The husband and wife team of Zhang Zheng and Yun Zhang Liao have run the store as a space for visitors to gather on the weekends and borrow books, listen to lectures, or just meet with friends.
我觉得我最想念的应该就是那种不期而遇的客人，就是其实有时候我们来店里也不知道会遇到谁，但就推门而入就会遇到一些很神奇的朋友。
Although the bookstore catered to Southeast Asian readers, they also had frequent local visitors, people wanting to learn more about Taiwan's growing multicultural society. There are around 800,000 migrant workers in Taiwan, nearly all from Southeast Asia, and about 500,000 so-called new immigrants, or foreign spouses of Taiwanese citizens, many of whom face barriers and prejudice in local society.
灿烂时光真的，我感觉这边真的会让来自不同地方的人，就是会 stick together， 然后这种 intertwine 的这种氛围是我在其他书店好像比较没有那么多。我会说就是还是会有一些，可是这种氛围是我一直觉得这边有一个魔力。就那一场的读书会，虽然只是短短2个小时，但我觉得那个 journey 是很丰富的。
The bookstore's rich history is painted on the walls, with postcards and signatures from visitors, and gifts from people whose lives were touched by the stories and memories made here.
For the past 10 years, the bookstore owners have been keeping track of books using handwritten logs like these, covered with names in Thai, Vietnamese, Indonesian, English, and Chinese. With no limit to how long they can rent the books, sometimes it's hard to keep track. But for the owners, the real value isn't the books themselves, it's the knowledge inside that's priceless.
And while one chapter closes for the bookstore, its story continues at a major transit hub in Taipei. This is where many Indonesian migrant workers spend their days off. And here, the books come to the readers.
现在南势角的书店虽然要结束，不过这边会持续办下去。那就是不管是我来，我太太来，或者我们有志工，大家轮流维持这个小空间。那你看这边可能有1000个印尼朋友吧，至少有1-2个爱看书。
In no time, readers are clamoring over their wares.
我喜欢 businessman。
你未来想要当 businessman？
对，我喜欢了。
我 like 那个 history book, storybook, and comic.
As they turn the page on this chapter of their lives, the owners hope the brilliant times made at their shop will continue in the stories of readers and their lives in Taiwan. James Lin, Kamashri, and Tiffany Wong in New Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, we leave you with images of a king penguin returning to its natural habitat after months of rehabilitation at Argentina's Mundo Marino Foundation. I'm Sani Chi. Take care and see you next time.